Adriaan. After all these lawyers, myself including by the way, but we'll finally go to something else and change our focus also a little bit. Next speaker is, as you've seen, Stefan Wolf. He is the CEO of the Global LEI Foundation, Legal Entity Identifier. And he will definitely speak more about the combination and the use of registered data together with the LEI data. Stefan co-founded IS Innovative Software in 1989, and he was later a member of the executive board of the succeeding IS Tailored Data in Germany. And this company ultimately became part of the Interactive Data Corporation, where he held the role of CTO. He has been a member of the board of the e-Finance Lab, an industry academic partnership between several universities, IT companies and banks. He also was the co-editor of several journals, and he was a lecturer at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. He has a university degree in business administration from Goethe University in Frankfurt, and I'm very curious to learn more about the combination and the cooperation, I would say, between the LEI and the business registers. Stefan.
Thank you, Rico. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here today. First of all, I would like to ask you one question. Who has heard of the LEI already? I hope everyone. And who is interested to hear more about the LEI? Please raise your other arm. So that gives us a little bit of momentum for the last session today. The challenge is that I have a few slides, but I would like to offer you the chance to discuss more and to raise questions. So if you allow me, since you know the LEI, to rush through the slides, if that's okay with you, and that gives us a little bit more time later to raise questions, if that's okay with you. So let's start with the Legal Entity Identifier. It's a code, a 20-digit code. Why is it 20 and not 19? Well, some people decided that. The address space is big enough for basically all companies in the world. The LEI code is unique, and we manage it to be unique together with our partners. And what is it for? What is the scenarios that the LEI code can be used in? So first of all, the origin has been the regulators after the Lehman crisis and the complete meltdown of some of the markets, derivatives markets. So they put regulation out where they want every counterparty, every participant in financial transactions to report these transactions using an LEI in order to make sure that people can identify the participants in those transactions. Mainly in the United States, Dodd-Frank Act. In Europe, it was EMIR. These kind of regulators and regulations that was put out created this LEI system where people had to have one, or still have to have one. And the latest one is IOPA, which is the European Association for Insurance Companies and trusts and pension funds. So they put regulation out that each of those organizations must have an LEI for performing their regulatory duties. But here in this list, you see a lot of potential for the LEI in other areas. So partially it's in other areas of regulation. So as you can see, for instance, anti-money laundering, AML, and other areas, there's a high interest of the regulators to talk with us about how can we use the LEI in order to make the world a more transparent, a more safer place. But there are also benefits for the private sector. The LEI was set up as a private-public partnership. So the regulators initiated it. It came from the FSB recommendation. But in our board, for instance, we have 16 directors. They're all coming from the private sector as delegates. And we're trying also to explore opportunities together with partners from the private sector. How can they actually improve their risk management? I mean, in real terms, managing the money that they have, under management. What about operational efficiencies? Let me give you one example. We had just heard a few examples, data providers, whether it's open data and for free, whether it's per license fee, but you have become data providers. And there are other data providers, commercial data providers, the Bloombergs, the Reuters, the FactSets, the S&P in the world. Now think of this poor organization called bank or insurance company or any other company who has to take that data from all these various sources for all kinds of reasons and put it into databases. Now, each of these data assets, you know, the reference data, for instance, comes with a different identifier. And that creates the problem of mapping those identifiers. And that's where the Bloombergs in the world are so good at. So guess what? People take the identification and the reference data, like business card information, like address details, things that you manufacture, but they take it from Bloomberg, because Bloomberg aggregates this data and makes the data mappable to each other. And that's not just Bloomberg. There are lots of others. I'm not affiliated with Bloomberg, don't get me wrong. It's just the largest. And that is a huge market, a multi-billion-dollar market, just for creating, you know, mappings and among those various assets. And there are technology providers, the IBMs, the SunGuards, and many, many others, cloud providers lately, who actually take this data assets and put that together. And for the private sector, this is a huge burden. It's also a cost factor. So we had one bank who said we have 10 legacy systems, 10 big computer systems that they purchased over the years in all kinds of jurisdictions. And guess what? In each of those systems, they have a different identifier for legal entities, and the string, the name of the company, was also different in each of these systems. You can imagine how that feels for someone who is a compliance officer, a risk officer, an IT officer in such a firm, and has to provide proper reports, proper systems, cloud-based services, as we have just seen them. So lots of applications, actually. And the legal entity identifier is nothing else, a little piece in the puzzle, kind of like a helpful tool, an umbrella, so to say, to help people to get to this level of efficiency and to have all these use cases implemented. We're not there yet, but that's the vision. That's what we are for. Who supports the LEI initiative? Well, I mentioned the FSB. That was the origin. You know, the G20 governments looked after the Lehman crisis into what's wrong in the industry, what's wrong in the market. They asked the FSB to come up with recommendations. There were a lot of other recommendations, but one of them was the creation of a unique identifier. They looked at all the identification systems in the world, and they came up with the assessment that none of the existing ones met all the criteria that they envisioned for helping the risk management in the financial service industry. The FSB mandated the regulators, basically, and there are lots of regulators, over 70 right now. They are coming together in the so-called ROC, Regulatory Oversight Committee. It's a global community of regulators from all kinds of different areas of regulation. It's pretty unique. I personally don't know of any other case where so many different international regulators from all kinds of different spaces come together with one vision and one goal to have more transparency. And they come together to think about the evolution of the LEI system. They are the policy makers. They say, so to say, they give us the policies, you know, all of us, on how the system should evolve. The GLEIF was created afterwards because it was absolutely clear in the beginning that this LEI system can only work in a federated mode. So not a centralized, big organization, big budget, you know, large teams sitting somewhere, but rather organizations being close to the markets, being close to the legal entities, who can help actually creating this system. And the GLEIF, that's the organization that I have the chance to run now, is meant to manage this federative system, right? Because you need some kind of guidance in a federated system. And we were established in 2014, last summer. I made a joke once by the end of last year, where I was, you know, I joined 1st of October. By the end of last year, we had over 70 regulators plus their organizational bodies. Can you imagine how many people? We had 16 directors coming from all jurisdictions, from China to Argentine to Europe. We had 22 partnering organizations, LOUs as we call them, of which some are business registered. And I had one employee. That was the result last year. We managed together with all of them in a partnership approach to get to where we are right now. Those LOUs, those partnering organizations, the term LOU comes from the language that was issued in the beginning, local operating unit. So many of them are neither local nor just operating units. There are LEI issuers. They do the maintenance of the data, and they help us and the legal entities to keep the system alive. We are about to embark with 30 right now, and there are 5 or 6 more in the pipeline, being endorsed by the ROC. That means that the ROC, those regulators, have picked individual organizations in their jurisdictions to help them to create the environment for the issuance of LEIs. They all operate in a not-for-profit model, at least in that part that is related to the LEI business. And right now we have about roughly over 370,000 LEI codes being issued and verified and validated. Well, 370,000, let's stick to that number for a moment. We're just talking about market participants in financial transactions. The term legal entity is quite differently defined than you would define a legal entity. For instance, mutual funds are, in our world, obliged to have a legal entity identifier because they participate in financial transactions. But there are no legal entities, by no means. They usually belong to asset managers, firms who have many funds under management, and they have fund managers who actually do the financial transactions and everything else. But for us, they qualify as legal entity because they play an important, vital role in the financial services industry, and the transparency about them and what they do and where they are and who they are is an important asset. So legal entity is a little bit differently defined. I wouldn't say broader, because in some areas we have also limitations regarding natural persons, for instance, and others. Branches at the moment are not qualified for legal entities. So 370,000 of those being issued over the last, let's say, 24 months is quite a rapid development. Since the regulators have put regulation out, making it mandatory to have an LEI only in North America and Europe. In most other jurisdictions, like in Asia, for instance, Africa, South America, the markets are not there yet, so people are a little bit more waiting what's going to happen. But we see a natural evolvement of that across the world. New regulation is coming out for making the LEI mandatory also for equity transactions and others. The GLEIF is a Swiss foundation. Why Swiss? Being small, being independent, having a good law system were among those criteria. Maybe the FSB is located in Basel as well. Maybe that helped. I don't know. But it is only domiciled in Switzerland. We are operating on a global scale, so the board mandated the CEO to open up a major operating site. Actually, you could call it almost headquarters in Frankfurt, Germany. Reason for that, lots of considerations, mainly cost considerations, easy of reach and these kind of things. So the majority of employees are located in Frankfurt. We're having 11 at the moment. We're growing to 30 by the end of the year. Some of the employees work abroad, United States, Switzerland, and other jurisdictions. And we would like to grow this international approach over time. The GLEIF is overseen by the ROC. The ROC has observers that sit in each of our board meetings. We publish our meeting minutes. If you go to gleif.org, you will find all the governance structure, meeting minutes of the board meetings and everything else. We want to be as transparent as possible. And without having a slide for that, we make sure that the data that we host, capturing the data from all the other LOUs, we put them all together into one spot on the GLEIF website, that this data is IP-free, copyright-free, and under open data license agreements, Commons, CC Commons license agreement, available to any kind of usage whatsoever. The only thing we say in our terms of use is you cannot pick the file and sell it. That would not be allowed. Our main responsibilities, you can describe this in a way that we say, on one hand, for this network of federated organizations, the LOUs and the GLEIF, we are the rule maker. We're creating the technical standards, we're creating the organizational legal standards. Master agreement is one of them, the contract that everyone signs in order to become part of that system. We create those standards in consultation with our partners. But we also monitor them, that's the third point. So that means we make sure that every organization that joins our network is and stays compliant with those rules and regulations. And compliance issues are, for instance, like, are they operating on a not-for-profit basis? Do they provide the data without IP, without copyright? And is the data quality where we want it to be? Data quality is absolutely key. It's one of the biggest drivers of our thinking right now, to raise the bar for everyone to get to those data quality levels where we want it to be altogether. But we also have an operational function, admin function. I mentioned IT. We don't have a presentation for IT stuff today, but as you can imagine, you can download files, you will be able to search everything and so on and so forth. That's for sure. We organize ourselves around services. So the GLEIF's main organizational vision is to be a fully service-oriented organization. Now the term service is used by many people. What we mean by service is that the GLEIF offers service management, and we're going to use ISO 20000 service management, and eventually we're going to be certified under ISO 20000. That means all of our core services, processes, interfaces, and everything else should be certified. We're talking about 13 core processes, plus a few processes around that, like the accreditation of our partnering organizations. And those services will be measured. A very important aspect is that service quality can only be measured if you have goals and objectives. Those goals and objectives should be SMART. Measurable is one of them, one of the key elements there. That means we will provide on our website, starting next year, analytics on the GLEIF's performance and the LOU's performance in terms of service management, including data quality metrics. So you will find data quality reports on the website. You will find service quality reports on the website. We started with a little thing, right? We have a common data file format, an XML standard that we use for exchange of data. And that's the common data file format. That is a standard that each of our partnering organizations has to obey. When we started, we figured that over 50% of the partnering organizations did not compile well, their file did not compile well. So they did not really met the standard. Little things here, little things there, but overall, schema evaluation, for those who are a little bit familiar with that, failed in over 50% of all cases. It took us 3 months to work together with our partnering organizations to go into every detail and every piece of information, every definition and every aspect in order to make them deliver files on a daily basis that simply run through the compiler, run through the validation. We're now up to add about 180 data quality controls now that the files are proper, in order to make sure that the data included in those files will be also managed well and get organized in a way that people can use this in all these use cases that I just mentioned. It's a very important aspect. The federated network that I used to talk about today, it's called the GLEIF, the Global Legal Entity Identifier System. System is a little bit misleading. It's not a technical system. It's not like a computer network with message flow and these kind of things. System means it's a legal environment where all the parties sign the exact identically same contract. And this contract is also going to be published under commons, under open license agreement terms, that everyone can see what's going on in the GLEIF. That's a very important aspect that people don't think that we fiddle in some conditions here and some conditions there that might be different. The access to the data is barrier-free. Barrier-free means everyone can come to the website and can download parts or even the whole file without any barriers. And by barriers, we mean not just commercial barriers. We don't even provide a login. You can simply come, click on that file, or you have a computer program fetching that file, and you can fetch that file as often as you like, completely anonymously. Once the search capability is provided, that's going to be in August, September this year. People will also be able to download subset of the data linked to the searches that they just run, right? And they can also store the searches for coming back later or tomorrow or the next day to get tailor-made subsets of the data, because 370,000 records in one file is already something that most people cannot deal with anymore. Once we're over the million, it's the end of it. Then most organizations will not be able to process that data on a daily level anymore. So update files, delta files, queries over interfaces, and these kind of things are essential. And the GLEIF, as I said, is a legal network. We have a self-registration model. You're familiar with that? So the registrants come to the LOU. They give their data. The LOUs then have the job to validate, to verify the data, and to validate everything is correct. Once this is done, they issue the LEI number. The LEI number gets then uploaded into a file. The file gets uploaded into a concatenated file, a chained file, so to say, which is then provided in the network. And on the right side, you see the stakeholders, the users of the data under the open license agreement who can download those files. Services, I said service management is key. This is just a few examples, as you can see. And I'm sure we will have the slides being distributed, so you don't have to write everything down. The slides will be in your pack. But this is not the end of this. So we are also obliged to develop new services together with our partners in order to make it as easy as possible and convenient as possible for the target audiences to use the LEI to their benefits. Well, my last slide, and already so much a hint for a discussion, is we believe in partnerships. We believe in an open, federated system of partners, sharing the same vision. And the vision is and has been the vision of free access to identification information in order to avoid a next Lehman crisis. There is no other agenda, nothing else. What we want to do is we're talking just about identification management. We're not talking about anything else. No reference data, no sales model on data. We don't do accounting information. I just saw what you guys are doing. This is all not in our grasp. Our grasp is only legal entity identification for those use cases that I just described. And being so strict to ourselves in limiting our model, making it actually that tiny in the end of the world, we believe this creates fantastic opportunities for partnering with others. And I'm here today, and I'm very grateful that I had a chance to talk to you today, because I believe business registers are a natural partner to the GLEIF and to the GLEIF system. I mean, we've just heard today, and please allow me, I'm new to this business, so if I say something wrong, then blame it on my lack of knowledge of your great work. What I've just seen here is that among business registers there are different and even competing business models. I think that's a good thing, because in the end of the day, people work towards their models and towards their satisfying their stakeholders, right? So that's a good thing. So for some of you, it might be easy. For others, there might be a little bit more thinking necessary. But I still believe, if we take all of this aside and just look at the facts of what we want to achieve together, by partnering together, in what way lots of ideas possible, right, is to us a very attractive thought that we wanted to share with you. And having spoken with some, not all, but some of you, I've heard similar thoughts. So this is not going to happen overnight. This is not falling from the sky, so to say. But since we're here now and very open for talks and for ideas and you know, and sharing visions, this is the invitation that we have. Whether some of you would like to discuss this now or next year or in 2 years, I don't know. That is completely up to you. But we would like to open the floor for working together in our joint mission, you know, to make this a transparent place. So thank you for your attention, and Rico, I think.